Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to a recorded session of the Huddle. Not that that matters, apparently. Apparently it does. For those who aren't familiar, I may or may not have recorded the last session, which is why you haven't watched it. Anyway, we're recording this one, and thanks for coming. This session, we've got some interesting stuff to talk about. We are going to do some review from a little bit of the stuff from our last session as well to make sure we do have a recorded version that sits on our intranet. But we're also going to talk about a few things that have popped up in the latest disciplinary actions, which is always fun. And again, we're looking for education, not humor. Though if we find some humor, all the better. So I think we're going to kick off with an issue that I think we should talk about before anybody dips their toe into the disciplinary committee's hearings. And this issue is the recording of your visits to listings that are not yours and putting them on social media. So, and the reason this came up, I think if last session, Will had that in his notes that we were going to talk about the use of your recordings in social media and posting them on social media. And we didn't get to it. And then as coincidentally, as I was reviewing the latest disciplinary action committee's findings in that newsletter, I found some stuff that reminded me of it. So we're going to talk about it. So if you are not aware, you need permission, if you are not the listing agent, to advertise a home with your video and post it on social media. Okay, if you create this video and post it on social media, you need permission. And let's read about it. So this was actually the lead investigator for the state, Laurel North. She's the lead investigator for the state of Utah. And she wrote an article about this, let's see, two newsletters ago. And so I'm just going to read it for you so you can get a pretty good idea of what's going on there. And I'll post some of this in the chat too so you have it with you. We've seen a concerning trend in complaints where a non-listing sales agent advertises a property using videos or photos of a property without permission from the listing agent or property owner in order to promote themselves and their services. Okay, I think that's the big key, in order to promote themselves or their services. Let me illustrate using 3 simplified examples of recent complaints. First, a buyer's agent makes an appointment to show a client a property for sale. The agent shows up at the property with a film crew, no client, and proceeds to guide the film crew through the property as they shoot a personal promotional video on behalf of the buyer's agent. The complaint alleged that the buyer's agent invaded the property owner's privacy, gained access to the property under false pretenses, and left a camera crew workers unsupervised inside the home. Part of the evidence supplied to us was the footage of the buyer's agent visit from the property owner's personal home security camera. I didn't even actually realize what is going on here, but I'm fairly certain that I have the results of the committee's discipline for this individual ready to present to you today. So that seems pretty obvious, right? I mean, who brings a film crew into a listing that isn't yours? That's great. So anyway, that should seem obvious. That should seem pretty egregious, but yes, someone did do that, and they were reported, and they were fined, and we'll tell you about that in a minute. Okay, second example. A buyer's agent makes an appointment to show a client a property for sale. Shortly after the showing, the listing agent found a video posted on social media showing the buyer's agent, no client, walking through the property using derogatory language as to the condition of the property. This video was reposted by other viewers to expand the damaging remarks exponentially. Yeah, that's going to attract a lot of attention. I mean, we shouldn't be using, I think if we're doing those personal showings with our clients and we're doing video walkthroughs that are only meant for our clients and us, maybe we can voice our real concerns. So that also seems like a bad idea, as everybody is recording us and listening to us as we walk through their homes.
Mike, one additional piece of that,
What?
that particular one where it came up as an ethics violation as well. But let me just pose out another example. What if what was said was all positive at least in the eyes of the agent or whatever, but they gave positive input about the house. Does that make it okay to post the video?
What do you all think? Does that make it okay to post a video if you're nice? It's a good question,
The,
Rob.
the reason why I pose that question is whether it be derogatory, positive, that it in the administrative rule, it doesn't say that as long as you're nice about what you're posting, then it's okay. We still have to get authorization to post anything that is out there in because that's a form of marketing. And if you're not the listing brokerage or the listing agent, we don't have that authorization to do anything outside of it. So, and the fact that, so if we did have positive comments that we were going to be, that were there for the property, there's still a slew of other things that could happen. For example, let's say that either the seller of the property was extremely private, or they had highly valuable uh, art or things that they didn't want the general public to have knowledge of. And now this video of a Rembrandt gets photographed in the back of their, in this picture, and now their house can all of a sudden be at a greater risk of theft. We never know what the consequences can be. So again, it's not our position to be able to determine if it's okay or not. It's up to the seller and their authorization for everything that we do.
Thank you, Rob. I love that comment. All right, let's do the last example here that she includes in her article. Third, a sales agent personally secured a purchase agreement from a property owner that allows assignability. The property owner was represented by a listing agent. The sales agent, in order to advertise the availability of this assignable contract, used the listing agent's photos from the MLS on marketing brochures and email blasts without permission of the listing agent or the owner of the property. So those are all examples of things that are definitely not things that you should do. And I think we should look at this from the listing agent's perspective as well. I'm sure we all know people who we trust to, walk through our own listings and do some social media advertising with them that we could potentially ask for permission from our sellers for. But we do need to be protective of this, right? So we shouldn't just hand out permission to advertise our listings haphazardly, and we should and be guarded with some of this information. Okay.
So Mike,
Yeah.
kind of another question about that. Maybe another question we ask is, so what are the things that we can do? If anyone has ideas. Raised hand, sorry.
Sandy, take it away.
Sandy.
Hi, guys. So I have a question.
Mhm.
When I have buyer representation, I always use our social media graphics to show that I have buyer representation under contract on a listing. And I do go to the MLS and I pull the primary picture of the property to use. Now, is it just about the disclosure on the listing side, the listing agent as well, that I need, or is there additional stuff that I should be doing in order to not be in violation?
Are you saying so on whatever marketing you're using the photo from the MLS of the primary photo, and you're using that in what format?
I think it's our Sochi.
Yeah. So
when we text it. Yeah.
Yeah. The you text the picture in and it produces a whole bunch of templates.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so there's two parts. When we're using things, we have the ability through IDX feeds through the MLS to use the photos or links back to the MLSs. If we're getting from a marketing standpoint, for any material that's being produced, is it, and I apologize for this, I might be a little bit unfamiliar with the format. Is this a link or is it like a printable?
No, the format is basically this this service that we have. Agents can text or email a single photo into the email address or the phone number, and then you get back a link to a massive amount of templates that that are put over the top of this photo, right? And these templates are the vast majority of them are for social media posts. These templates contain our logos and stylized writing or whatever, right? For almost any scenario. So she's sending this picture in that she's taking off the MLS, getting back all these templates, and she's putting it on. And the template over her example is just under contract.
Okay. I would say there's two parts. One, when we're sending them to clients, we have the authorization to do that. If we're sending them as marketing material, then that could be an issue. I want to get more detail about it before I would say any formal response. But if it's being passed to do some type of additional marketing to generate our own leads, then that could qualify as something that we need to get permission from.
Just so you're aware, the easiest workaround for this is just to snap a photo of the front of the home with your cell phone. Yeah. Kimberly says, asked the question as I asked it. Can we take our own pic of the house as a buyer's agent in that case? Yes. Taking pictures in public is your First Amendment right. So you can take any picture that you can see in public spaces. And Ron says, are you saying we can't use MLS photos? Yeah, we can't use MLS photos for our own marketing purposes. Okay, we can use MLS photos to send those things to our clients so they can view them. And we can, that's obviously how the listing is showing itself to the public. We just can't use those for our own personal marketing purposes.
You can use the IDX feed that draws them back to the MLS website or links. But yeah, if you're capturing the MLS photos, that's a proprietary piece, and we don't have authorization for that.
Yeah. So the easiest thing to do is if you is just to snap your own photos as you're outside on the curb. You can do that all day long. The point is, it's sort of similar. If a good example is Nicole Battle produces some really great social media stuff. We can't just take her video and go, hey, this is actually me. It's my stuff. Like, we can't do that, right? So we got to create our own stuff. And even if it gets boiled down to something as simple as, the primary photo on a listing, I know it's sort of getting in the weeds and highly likely no one cares. But if we're going to take the time to do it, we should probably do it the cleaner way. Allison says, I did file a complaint against an agent that mailed out hundreds of postcards of my listing using my photos saying she sold, which implied it was her listing, never mentioning representing the buyer. Yeah, that's problematic. It's problematic, and you should have done that. Yeah, we need to be very clear on what we're doing with this stuff. It's totally okay to say represented the buyer. We just got to use our own photos on this stuff. While we're on it, while we're talking about, oh man, that guy and his videographer thing, that is just hilarious. Okay, so I'm going to read you. So this is the disciplinary, I didn't know this happened. This just worked out really great. I'm going to read you the disciplinary action that was taken against this agent in connection to the number one example. In a stipulated order dated February 21st, 2024, Mr. Willie acknowledged that he hired videographers to create video clips of him showing homes to buyers. He then contacted a seller's agent to schedule a showing of a listed property. On the day of the showing, Mr. Willie allowed 2 videographers to enter the property with the intention to create a personal real estate advertisement without the permission of the owner. He admits that he left the videographers unattended inside the home for several minutes while he left to change his clothes. He returned, and several minutes of video were completed. The homeowners returned while the videographers were at home. When confronted by the homeowner, Mr. Willie told the owner that he was filming the home for his client's husband, who could not be present for the showing. However, this was not a standard showing. Mr. Willie did not have an agency agreement with the person whom he showed the home. A few days later, Mr. Willie apologized to the owner, acknowledged that he should have obtained permission to film the home prior to doing so. Mr. Willie's actions are in violation of Utah law and administrative rules. He agreed to pay a civil penalty of $5,000. You know, I just feel like you shouldn't change your clothes if you're a buyer's agent inside a home that you're showing. Like, that seems like, even that, like, there's no reason to change your clothes. You know, you can show up in the attire that's appropriate for the occasion and not have to disrobe for any reason. So, pro tip, wear the right clothing when you show a home. I can't believe that that's a pro tip, but apparently it qualifies as a pro tip now. There's also another one. So let's see. So this is the other one that's I think this is the other one that's in connection with this same subject. In a stipulated order dated February 21st, Mr. Grant said he obtained permission to show a client a home listed with another agent. During the showing and without the knowledge or consent of the seller or seller's agent, he recorded himself walking through the home, commenting on features that he did not like. Mr. Grant posted the video to his social media account without the consent of the homeowner or the listing agent, but later removed it. When asked about it by the division, Mr. Grant denied the existence of the video. In a subsequent interview with the division, Mr. Grant admitted the existence of the video and that he posted it on social media. Mr. Grant admits that his contact violated Utah law. He agreed to pay a $5,000 civil penalty. Those are steep. Those are some steep penalties. I mean, I feel like that is a heavier penalty than we've seen for just, you know, fraud. Whatever, I'm in favor of it. Whatever.
Well, I would also say that the penalties might be steep and above what they've normally been doing, but I think it's probably justified on the amount that was charged, because this is a behavior that they want to make sure stops before it gets out of control.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Rob. I think my general consensus is the fines in general are way too low. Like in the past, as part of the activities related to our old broker roundtable, we would usually end with reviewing disciplinary actions for learning purposes. And $5,000 were fines issued for people like just lying and committing fraud. And this one's for that, which, you know what, I'm in favor of. Doesn't seem like they're, you know, these fines need to hurt a little bit.
Hey, Mike.
Take it away.
Hey, I have a quick question for you on the Facebook post from Berkshire Hathaway Utah Real Estate.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they'll send off, you know, certain listings and they'll say, hey, this is a great listing, but it's on the Berkshire site. Can we share those?
We as Berkshire agents, we have permission to,
you know what I'm saying?
Can you share, are you asking if you can share Berkshire's social media post?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I mean, in general, you can share any social media posts because the attributed person is acknowledged, right? So you're saying, I'll use Nicole again, you know, if Nicole creates some great content and I share it, no one is questioning who created it.
Right. Okay.
Right.
I just
And
wanted to make sure because it's pictures and videos of someone else's house that is not my listing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You just one of the key things that you have to make sure that you include if you do share it, especially if it's say it's from another company, is you've got to still have Berkshire's logo on your
Right.
landing page, what you're sharing. That's
Right.
one of the most common complaints from the division is the name of the brokerage is not included in any of the marketing or advertising that's being done.
Right. Yes. But as long as it's Berkshire, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments on this particular subject before we move on? I did one of the things that I haven't seen in a while, the licensing statistics they put out in this latest newsletter. And I feel like I haven't seen those in a long, long time being put out like that. And I think y'all probably have some interest in knowing what that looks like. So let me share. All right, so this is from the latest newsletter, and this is obviously year ending real estate. So this is the licensing real estate 2023. So there were 22,853 active licenses. 18,517 of those were sales agents. 2,442 were principal brokers. 1,723 were associate brokers, and only 171 were branch brokers. Well, I'm in a small club. I don't know if that's good or bad. There are 4,016 inactive licenses, and there are 1,546 continuing education licenses, 3,017 companies. And this one's very interesting. Enforcement. There were 430 total cases. So that's more than one a day. Real estate complaints received 482. And real estate cases closed 406. Wow. That's kind of impressive. AG cases, I'm assuming they referred these to the Attorney General, 46. It's kind of a lot. I don't think we necessarily care about mortgage and everybody else, but these are for the top five most common disciplinary actions. Believe it or not, 22 of them are unlicensed activity. And the next is, which I would assume would have been number one, the advertising one, where everybody forgets to put the real estate affiliation, their company they're affiliated with on their advertising. 15 property management, 12 breaches of fiduciary duty. And I don't know what licensing action is, so we're just going to pretend like that isn't there. All right, there you have it. There you have it, folks. All right, moving on, Rob. Are we going to do those three elements now?
Perfect. You want me to read the question then?
Yeah, hit it.
Okay. So this carries off from last week, a couple of common questions that we're hearing, and basically just wanting to discuss some ways that we can handle these questions. So the first one, how are commissions negotiable if Berkshire Hathaway won't negotiate their commission? Mike, do we want to do it one at a time, or do you want me to just read all three questions?
Read them all three, and then we'll go through one at a time.
All right. Number two, why would I pay someone to negotiate against me? And then number three, I have no problem paying you, but I'm not going to pay for the buyer's agent. They can pay for their own agent.
By the way, while we're talking about this, please chime in, raise your hand, or put in the chat so we can make sure we're addressing this properly. And I know that we're approaching the beating a dead horse here with this subject matter, but I don't know that we're quite there. I don't know the horse is completely dead yet, but we may be approaching it now. But please chime in and comment, because I do know that those questions are being posed on the regular to our agents, you all. And I think it's just like any objection that you've learned to overcome in your career. This is no different. And I don't think these questions are necessarily unique. They're just more unique at the current moment. So, and how we respond, the way we respond, and the language you use is what's most important here. So, Rob, take a shot at that first one. What is your take on this?
Okay. So again, the first question is, how are commissions negotiable if Berkshire won't negotiate their commission? The first thing that I would make sure that you consider with any question, any objection that is being addressed or brought forth, is the first thing that we should be doing is we want to repeat and affirm that question, because not only it helps the client feel like they're being listened to and we're hearing what they're saying, then by affirming what they're saying, is it not only validates their concern, but it also helps diffuse where they're coming from. So for example, when they say that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat the question. Okay, I just want to make sure I hear you correctly. You're concerned on whether or not commissions truly are negotiable, since Berkshire Hathaway still wants to charge the 6%. Is that correct? And Mike is going to say, absolutely. That's correct.
Absolutely.
Well, Mike, if I were you, I'd feel the same way too. And you might be thinking, why do I want to do that? Why would I want to say it that way? Because now it just, again, is affirming their concern. And I want you to just think of this perspective real quick. If we were in their position, and we truly are, it's not unreasonable to be concerned in this case about paying the commission. And if they feel like Berkshire Hathaway isn't willing to reduce their fees, in their mind, they do think that you're unwilling to negotiate that. So that affirmation of what they're saying helps diffuse the position. So again, you repeat the question, and then say to Mike, if I were you, I'd feel the exact same way too. Now I can go into kind of like a transition or a little bit of a segue. Say, Mike, ultimately what I'm hearing you say is you're concerned about netting the most money on the sale of your home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Perfect. Well, let me answer that question, the concern that you have. The great thing about what Berkshire Hathaway is doing is we are maximizing the effort so that we can market your property to the majority of the consumers that are out there. And in return, that gives you more of an opportunity to net money on the sale of your home. Now, you may think that just because Berkshire Hathaway believes that the best way for you to net the most money on the sale of the home is to follow our marketing plan, which includes offering a 3% commission for the buyer's agent, because a buyer's agent such as myself is going to work extremely hard and may have been working for a extremely long period of time with a buyer to find your home. And we want to make sure that we are giving your home and exposure the maximum amount of opportunity to bring that particular buyer in. Now, the one thing that we have here, Mike, is you have the decision and the choice if you believe what we're offering is the right solution or not. Because there are a ton of brokerages out there that allow you to put this home on the MLS for $500. But the question is what is that going to cost you if you ultimately decide to make that choice? See, commission are negotiable in the state of Utah. We believe with our company, the best approach is what we've already discussed with you. So again, I'm going to say, of course, commissions are negotiable. There's all kinds of opportunities and options that are available to them. And if they choose to take this option with us based on the value that we presented, then that ends up being their choice. But they do have the option.
I love that answer. Anybody have any discomfort with that strategy? Or is anybody
Hey,
using
Rob.
that strategy?
Yeah.
I actually used this strategy my last few listing appointments, and when they brought up the debate of the commissions and brought up the fact that they had interviewed others that were willing to do it for less, or that a flat fee broker, or something, and I just agreed with them that that's absolutely an option for you.
Absolutely.
It's really interesting how, like you said, it almost like eased their.
You're not arguing with them.
I wasn't arguing with them.
You're not fighting
and
with
so
them.
it kind of let their guard down. It's like they were expecting an argument back for me to be like, well, here's all the reasons why you need to use me. And instead I just said, if that is important to you, that's absolutely an option for you.
And many times, Kim, when they say, hey, there's another agent that'll list it for 5.5, 4, whatever is there, that's when I would make the statement, and I would say, Kimberly, there's actually other brokerages and agents that will list it for $500. So the question is not how much is it going to that you're going to save in the reduced commissions, how much is it going to cost you
Exactly.
if you make that decision? And then you ask them the question. So Kimberly, let me ask you this question. Why do you think there are other companies that are willing to list the property, say for $500 or at such a reduced commission? Do you think would they like to make more money if they could?
Yeah, of course.
Role play this with me.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. So why do you think another agent or company is only willing to offer a $500 fee to list the property?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. Simply their business model to put it on and not do anything else.
Okay, so they put it on the MLS and not do anything else. So do you think somebody with that particular model, I mean, how many homes a year do you think they'd have to sell in order to make enough of money to form a living? I mean, $500 a listing. They don't get all $500, but how many homes do you think they'd have to sell to make a living out of that?
A butt ton.
They'd have to sell a ton, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I believe a butt ton is about 256 Old English measurements.
So if they have to sell that many homes, do you think that they actually make money in other ways? How do you think they make money outside of just listing properties?
Yeah. So they're doing other things besides just taking the $500.
Okay. Any ideas how they may do that?
No.
Do you think they work with buyers ever?
Oh, probably.
And so if they go and obtain buyer leads, they're hoping that they can help a buyer go find a property, in return make 2, 3, 1, 3% commission off of that, right?
Right.
So let me ask you this question. So if I was one of those agents and I have a sign in your yard and I've already got my $500 from you, when somebody calls on that sign, that's an opportunity to potentially get a buyer off of that sign, right?
Yep.
So if I make more money on sign calls where buyers are calling on my sign, how motivated am I to get your home sold, knowing that once that home sells, that sign's going to come down?
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point.
You can
Yeah.
see where I'm going with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
again, it's not about how much money they saved. It's about how much money it cost them by listing with the wrong brokerage. And now you can turn around and see, that's not how I make my money. I make my money when the home sells. And you're trying to put the home on the market, not because you're wanting people to walk through your house and and embrace this inconvenience. You want to have this done complete as fast as possible and to make the most money possible. Well, that's the reason why you want to work with me, is because that's what I'm going to do for you. Does that make
Thank you.
sense?
Yep.
Any other thoughts? Okay.
All right, very good. Moving on.
The next one. Why would I pay someone to negotiate against me? Okay. Any thoughts on this one? And maybe has anyone dealt with that question?
That question, I don't know that the only context I've ever heard that
With the
come up
attorneys.
is in the settlement.
Yeah, the attorneys, they're kind of making their argument that that's the issue with the current structure, is that because a seller is hiring a listing brokerage and then that listing brokerage is offering a portion of the compensation for the buyer's agent, who is ultimately bringing a buyer who's the opposition of the seller. That's where this mindset comes from. And so the way I would phrase it is similar to what we did before. The key part of any objection handler is the power of handling the objection all stems from your ability to ask great questions. If we come and just convey to the client and we just start telling them, this is why, without ever asking the seller what they think and where they believe it should go, then it's us kind of us against them, versus if I can ask a client the questions, and if I ask the questions well enough, then the client ultimately self-discovers for themselves where they're going, and the objection ends up being handled, and they answer it for themselves. So the way that I would start off with this is, well, you'll tell me, client, why do you think that we're hiring someone who's negotiating against you? And now they're going to say, well, I'm the one that's footing the bill. Okay, well, why? I understand where you're footing the bill on this, but explain to me more. Where do you think that money is ultimately going, and their only objection is to negotiate against you? I'm going to listen to what they're saying, and they're going to say something. Well, they don't. They're going to want what's best for them. Totally get it, and you are correct. They want to get a transaction or a deal that's going to be in their best interest. Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. When a buyer goes to make an offer on a property, and it's a traditional, they need to get financing. It's not a cash transaction, but if they're needing to get financing, seller, what financial obligations does a buyer have typically when they're going to make an offer on a property? And they're going to list it off. They got to get the loan, so they're going to have a down payment. They've got closing costs, more than likely. They're going to have an extension there. If it's a first-time home buyer, how much money does a buyer typically have in excess that they can not only pay the down payment, the closing costs, and now the challenge of paying compensation? So I'm going to ask them questions that are going to help them understand that this is just a platform that helps the model of buying a home work. If they have less money and less resources, and there's obstacles in the way, it makes it very difficult for them to sell their house. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. Let's say now it's a cash transaction, and this kind of blends in with the third question, where the seller says, well, I'm willing to pay you, the listing agent, for your services because I believe you're worth it. You've demonstrated that you are a great agent, and I have no problem paying you, but I don't want to pay the buyer's agent because they don't do very much. So I would transition these two questions kind of together. And the way that I would handle that is, again, Mike, if you wouldn't mind being the client, I would just ask you, say, Mike, so you feel that me as your agent and Berkshire Hathaway as the company representing you on the list side is completely justified in what we're charging. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, great. So do you believe that what I do for you to help get your home sold is not only in your best interest, and my skill set, my work ethic is going to net you the most money as well? Is that correct?
Correct.
Perfect. Well, Mike, one of the key things that I also do in reference to listing and selling homes, I also oftentimes work with buyers. And when I do work with buyers, I put forth the same time and effort that I do when I list property. And so if you feel that the effort, the work, the integrity, the marketing and business strategy that I implement on selling a home, if I brought forth that same type of model on the buy side, would you feel that would warrant getting compensated?
Yes.
Okay. Because the key thing here, Mike, is we're going to be opening this property to a lot of great agents out there. And those that not only sell homes or they list property, but they also represent buyers as well. And many times those buyers work exclusively with those agents. And when they do, making your property marketable and exposed to those types of agents and clients, that's one of the key things we're going to do to be able to net the most money on the sale of your home. So when I hear that argument, well, you're worth it, but I don't want to pay the buyer's agent. They don't do anything. If I can tee it up that puts it in his position that everything I'm doing is worth getting paid. Well, and if I apply the same work ethic, then it makes common sense that when I do represent a buyer, I'm going to still be a high quality agent as well. I should also be able to make money on the buy side. And so breaking it down that way, now they may say a couple of other concerns that they have about on the buy side. Okay, great. I got to have to handle those one-on-one as well. But if they already have indicated that I'm a great agent and I'm worth the amount of money I get paid, then there are other great agents out there. And so that helps us when we're communicating the value of what a buyer's agent also does.
All right, very good. Anybody have any comments? Anything to add? The one thing that I will add, and this isn't necessarily how we should respond to our clients, but we need to keep this in mind that almost all of our clients, in one way or the other, want their problem of selling their home gone as soon as possible. Now, they may tell us, hey, listen, I don't care when it sells or how it sells. But the truth is, even if they don't need to sell, they have no other pressing desire. How many people want their listing, regardless of what it is, their real estate that they have some plan for, to sit around for months on end without getting sold? It's just a problem that hangs over their head. Everybody wants resolution sooner rather than later. And part of why you're offering compensation is to entice someone to come to your listing and get this transaction done. So don't forget it. Almost everybody has time concerns. And for your average transaction, when people are moving because of jobs or whatever, it's significantly more important, right? So don't forget that. Like it's a major incentive to sell your house in the fastest way possible. Ramon says, but in this case, the seller will say, let the buyers pay him. Yeah, I would say that that's going to come up. And I think, Ramon, in Park City, where I think this scenario may take place slightly more often than not, but I could also see where it wouldn't. I've heard that comment before. Yeah, just let the buyer's client pay him. There's pluses and minuses to every scenario. And if that's their choice, it's our job to inform them of what they're giving up by offering nothing. And they are giving something up, right? They're not just putting their home on the market, because that is part of a marketing package. And so it's our job to remind them the problem they're going to have when they offer nothing.
Yeah, Mike, I would also just add, in every objection that's out there, there's always going to be those people. There's going to be a group of ones that you're never going to be able to change their mind. Okay. So, and then there's going to be ones that might be on the fence. And then there's going to be those that aren't going to have a concern at all. And then others that are going to be easily able to persuade. So if we're talking about the one that we're not going to be able to change their mind, then that we just got to move on. That part's the given. You're going to have to move on from those. But those that are either on the fence, they can be persuaded. I think the way that I would look at it is this: to say, look, at the end of the day, the cost of selling a home, there is a cost of selling the home. And let's go over what that cost might be. You go over everything that's involved, from marketing, exposure, realtor fees, the cost of maintenance and repairs, the negotiation process. So the total price is going to always factor that in. And so when we go and bring that total price up, is the way that it has typically been, the cost of commissions have ultimately been factored into the cost of the home. And now what we're trying to do is, well, okay, let's separate those, and so that have the buyers pay for their own expense. And in some cases that may happen. And if that does, okay, great. But the total cost is still there. So the question is, do we believe that we can get more exposure when we offer to pay that compensation for the buyer's agent? Or do we believe that by removing that, we're going to be able to still maximize the efforts? I don't believe that we can. I believe that when we do offer that compensation, that it opens the door up to far more people that are going to look at that property. And at the end of the day, if we believe that, it's easy to convey that message. And if we convey that message in a positive way, it's going to be more believable with the client. But if we don't believe that, if we struggle with that, it's going to come across that way, which is going to make it more difficult for the client to believe us.
All right, very good. Kimberly, take it away.
Sorry. Hey, so this is kind of just funny what happened. I got an agent had told me that he's putting another house on the market and he'd let me come and show my buyer. And it wasn't yet listed. And so I was like, yeah. And so I showed the buyer and asked the agent in private, you know, what's the agreement as far as compensation? And my buyer happened to be VA, so I know he can't pay any fees. And so he said, well, I got a 4%, and so I'm willing to give you 2%. And so working back and forth between this and realizing my client wanted to make an offer, I contacted the agent again and just said, hey, am I the only person you told about this off-market listing, or have you told other people? Because we're really having a hard time finding my guy a property that he can afford, that he likes. And so the listing agent was like, well, no, you're the only one that I told. And by the way, I was able to work it out to make sure you can get 3%. And I was like, great, because that's what I've signed. You know, he knew that that's what I signed my buyer with. Well, so we do the escrow instructions and everything. And then the agent puts the listing live on the MLS after we've already done escrow instructions. And guess what he lists as the BBC? 0%. And I got 3. And so that's an example of how I showed another one of this listing agent's properties, and he was offering 0 BBC on that one too. And he took a 6% listing. Perfect example of how they're doing that.
Everybody's always trying to be so clever about everything.
Yeah.
Trying to be.
Ramon, I'm not sure if I answered your question or anything. Okay.
Ramon says, when looking at comps, most of those comps include buyer's agent commission is built into the comps. Yeah, that's going to go away. You know, the one question I had on that, and I don't know that I've ever gotten a really good answer, but that's just one side. I mean, there's a seller's agent commission that's never discussed and never disclosed, and nobody can really ever take that into account. And pretty soon they won't be able to take buyer's agent commissions into account anymore either. Well, they might if we put them in offers, which we probably will. All right, I'm just rambling now. Anybody have anything to add there? It is 1:51. We're heading towards the end. Okay. It looks like to finish things off, let's finish. I do have a couple more disciplinary stuff that we can talk about, and then we'll send you on your way. Christopher Allen, January 18th, 2024, the division issued a citation for Mr. Allen for failing to produce documents or records requested by the division within 10 days after the requested date. They fined Mr. Allen $1,000. I only put that in there as a reminder. If you ever get anything from the division, you need to respond right away and be on top of it. Because if you don't respond, you're automatically, well, in this instance, you're automatically fined. And if you don't respond to other things, you're just automatically considered guilty. So be aware of that. And also this next one I included in here because there was often debate about whether or not anybody ever actually lost their license. And I have an example of that. Mr. Connor's license was renewed and immediately suspended due to pending criminal charges. The order also provided that should Mr. Connor be convicted of a felony, his license would be immediately revoked. Mr. Connor appealed the division's decision and requested that the decision be reviewed by the Real Estate Commission. Mr. Connor did not appear at the commission review hearing, but instead requested the prior order suspending his license be confirmed. He was, in fact, subsequently later convicted of a second-degree felony and a Class A misdemeanor, and his license was revoked. So there's your example, folks. All you have to do is have a second-degree felony and a Class A misdemeanor, and you will lose your license sometimes. I had those other two. Oh, wait. Those are I had 4 of the disciplinary action things, but we covered them all already. So, all right. That about wraps it up. Do you have any other comments, Rob?
No, if there's any other questions that anybody have about this topic, or if, like Kim offered, any suggestions that they have while they've addressed these, we'd love to hear other avenues. There's not one way to handle it. And so the more that we can combine everybody's experiences, the better.
It's also important to note that it is Rob's 28th birthday today. So congratulations, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, 28 years is great.
28 years young.
Yes.
Happy birthday, Rob. I do have one more example that I can share that just happened yesterday.
Swing away.
This is a
Great.
new meeting with a new buyer, and the first question he asked was, "What's going to be your cut?"
Oh, awesome.
And I said to him, "That's a really good question, and we're going to address that when I go through my buyer consultation packet with you." And I kind of deflected it at the time. While I built value while we were viewing the home, grant you, we won't have this luxury of viewing the home and getting to know the buyer soon, right? But I'm taking advantage of it now while I still can. And I knew that he had a home to sell as well. And so I went through fiduciary duties with him and just said, do yourself a favor. If I'm not the agent for you, that's fine. I took it away from him, like you were saying earlier, Rob, I think. And then I said, or I think Kim said that too. I said, if I'm not the one for you, that's fine. But make sure whoever you interview as one of your agents, whether it's buyer or seller, make sure that they know their fiduciary duties to you when you become a client. And if they don't, you just run the other way. And he laughed. And it was just a good opportunity for me to understand how it's working in this market, with these new changes, and to get used to those questions are going to come up more and more. And on this house that I showed him, they were offering a 7,500 BBC. And of course, in my stuff, it says 3%, right? So I explained to him that example I just gave. I said, I am really good at negotiations. And I did tell him I usually get the seller to cover that. And that's just the result. But if you're looking at it, and I did kind of talk to him about, we got to look at this as how much I'm going to save you in the long run, as opposed to what Rob had said, it's not going to cost you, but it's going to save you in the end. And he seemed to be really receptive. He was a young kid. He's bought a house before, he's bought a condo, and he was a young kid, but he seemed to be really receptive to where he got his wife on the phone. It's like, I want you to talk to Kimberly. So I feel like I don't have the deal yet, but I feel like it was a success in testing how we're gonna apply these new things.
I love that. And there's 2 key things about it. Is it's almost when the first question out of somebody's mouth is, what's your fee? What's this? And if you answer that without showing your value, it's never going to sound good. So what you did, Kimberly, is, that's a great question. And that's one of the key things that we're going to cover when we sit down and go over everything that we're going to do for you. But ultimately, what I'm hearing you say is you want to make sure that you have somebody who's representing you and getting your best interests. And if they do that, then you'd be okay with them getting compensated for getting you what you want. So it's a deflection process, but you're right. until they feel like you're worth something, they're going to have a tough time wanting to be willing to pay something if they haven't experienced that with you yet. I love that.
Also, very good reminders there. If you're ever put on the spot and someone is asking you to get into the weeds about a intense subject over the phone or over a text message, the go-to response, my favorite, is, "That's a good question. When are we going to sit down and talk about it?" Because trying to display value or show confidence or do anything other than in person is very difficult. It can be done, but also it's a good way to make sure people are serious, right? If they'll actually sit down with you, now you've got something. And again, I think we keep referencing. I've gone over the Jimmy Burgess stuff a few times, but the one thing he pointed out that I think I like the most is that there's some negatives about this NAR settlement, but some of the positives are that agents can no longer be lazy about what they do, how they do it, and how they get paid. And the benefit of that is I think it's going to weed people out who aren't willing to go the extra mile, know exactly what they do, when they do it, and how they do it, and how they provide value to people. And the people and the agents who aren't willing to really flesh that out and live up to it will be gone soon. Soon meaning, well, I'm guessing, but soon. I think that's a big benefit, and I think that'll leave a better pool of people to sell real estate. So anyway, with that, that's all we got. Thanks for coming.